Welcome back, everyone, for our next session. Before we dive into the presentation, I just want to remind everybody, please silence cell phones so we're not disrupting the presenter, and please leave questions till the end. And for our next presentation here, we have Mark Gallagher. He's going to be talking about the weather software and safety improvements for the NDDOT software innovation for travel information. He's been sharing how technology is enhancing road safety for real-time travel updates for North Dakota. So please welcome Mark Gallagher.
Morning, everyone. I'm assuming I'm not just hearing myself and you can all hear me okay. And I'm also aware that I'm all that stands between you and lunch, so I will attempt to be interesting and as brief as possible. A little bit about myself. I work for SRF Consulting Group, and I work with our software development team there, which is how we come to interface with the North Dakota DOT. In addition to that, I do some technology planning, road mapping, and some data analysis work as well. So there's a two-step method of moving forward things. So if I get out of sync on these, please forgive me. Today we are going to talk about some advancements in the software that North Dakota DOT uses to collect data and to disseminate it out to the public. And some of the things that they've done here I think are truly innovative. I've worked with traffic management entities around the country, and I think what they've done here is really impressive and really interesting. I hope you all feel the same. So, the weather. As they say, everybody complains, but nobody does anything about it. So, why is that significant? Crashes and weather are related. For reasons that are probably obvious to most folks here, the big one, of course, is reduced visibility and reduced surface friction. You see spinouts, jackknife trucks, people off the road, all the horrible things that happen when you get water, snow, anything that doesn't belong on the road, on the road. We also have issues with flooding. We have wind-related rollovers. And then the whole universe of the non-crash traffic impacts, slowdowns, confusion, diversions, all of these sorts of things. The interesting thing is that the weather isn't the largest factor in crashes. Statistically, more crashes actually happen during daylight hours and on dry pavement, but weather-related elements are unique and they are addressable. So, if you can't change the weather, at least you can warn people about it so that they know they need to be ready to react. There's a few different types of weather information that you can give people out there. The most common is what are called current area conditions, and these are from the observation stations that the National Weather Service operates. There's also what we call meteorological or environmental data. And these are from things like the environmental sensor stations, or ESS, that the DOT operates. And they give you very detailed information at a very specific point in the world. Beyond that, there's also forecast information. Is it going to rain? Is it going to be sunny? The National Weather Service produces those from about 122 offices around the country. There's also local and other forecasts. Your local TV station may have their own meteorologists who are doing their own forecasts based on a variety of models. And then lastly, there's what are called weather alerts. These are things like thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings, blizzard warnings, things like that. And those are all issued by the National Weather Service. In terms of how you get those to people, there's sort of a bifurcation out there. There's the pre-trip side of the world, and then there's the en route side of the world. And pre-trip is you can be at home, at work, doing anything you want on the treadmill at the gym and get this information. And you can get it from going to a website. You can watch TV, get it on the news. There are a few of us out there who still look at newspapers and actually look at the forecast and weather information there. There's all sorts of social media and special purpose apps that are either weather related or come from local TV stations, things like that, that will generate these alerts. You can get them on your phone. And then there's also the NOAA weather radio alerts. If you've got a weather radio, you can have it turned on. It's listening for a specific signal over the air, at which point it will beep at you, turn on, and relay the audio information. But once you start moving, things change a little bit. There's sort of this hybrid world where your cell phone can do alerts both at home and while you're in your car. For those of us who were in the session this morning, Cell phones in cars generally are not a great thing to be interacting with. I've got my little boo, they create a distraction. And if the idea is to make people safer, the last thing we want to do is bother them that way. You can also get weather information off the radio. However, commercial radio is commercial driven, and weather information is largely just something that is there to generate an audience for other things the station is doing, which is ad space. As a result, the quality of the information may not be that great, and it isn't going to be very frequent. Some vehicles now have in-vehicle displays. This is a relatively new thing for weather information, weather alerts, but you're not going to get a lot of penetration that way. So that leaves us with sort of the one mechanism that DOT operations can control and is en route for people on the roadway, and that's the roadside message sign. Whoops. Sorry, like I said, I'm getting out of sync between the two here. Had this great graphic. So, there it goes. Now we have the problem, right? We know all this information, but how do we get what we know to the people who actually need to know it? There are some real challenges with doing that. Number one, the weather changes. We all know that. But if you think about it, once I leave that pre-trip environment and I'm now en route, the world is evolving both because time is elapsing, the weather's elapsing, and I'm moving through the geography, and that weather can change. The National Weather Service reporting stations may not actually be anywhere near where your trip is. There's an old George Carlin line where he's doing the weather and he says, it's 72 and sunny at the airport, which is stupid because I don't know anybody that lives at the airport. And that's kind of the same thing that's happening here, right? We've got a limited number of collection stations out there. And when we get into delivering this data in vehicle, these complicated, interactive, information-dense user interfaces in a vehicle are generally not a good thing. You don't want people interacting with things in the vehicle. And then lastly, when we talk about what we might term hyper-local information, things that are coming from these sensor stations at the roadside, it's not available in a generalized way. It's out there on a website if you know where to look for it, but it doesn't really sync up with what you're doing. It's not a great information resource that way. So, when we look at the two types of information that we get into here, the weather alerts and then this sensor data from the side of the road, using these types of information is extremely labor intensive. For example, when you talk about the weather alerts coming from the National Weather Service, you've got to watch them. Somebody's got to be looking for these things. You need to decide whether or not it's significant enough to actually tell people about. You need to figure out what part of the world that it applies to. You need to determine whether or not you've got any signs that fall within that area. You have to figure out what sort of message you want to put on the sign. You actually have to go through the process of posting it on the sign. Then you have to go back and track all these changes and alerts, and then revise all the messages as needed, because again, the weather changes. Something that was a blizzard watch can become a blizzard warning. Something that becomes a high wind warning can become a thunderstorm warning, and they move. And you need to update the geography and change which signs are displaying things. Then when it's all over, somebody has to shut it all off so you don't have these stale messages out there talking to the world. And of course, weather never sleeps. This is a 24-hour-a-day job. If you're going to do it well, somebody has to track all of this information. Situation isn't really any better when you're talking about your weather sensors. Somebody's got to be monitoring all of this data, be looking at all of these parameters, and some of these sites can generate something like 20 or 25 different data points that you have to track. Are any of them worth putting a message on? Again, you have to look at the signs. Are any of them close enough to the sensors to be relevant? You have to put the messages up and figure out what they say. Again, the weather is changing. You have to monitor all of this data coming in over time and update your messages, and again, take it down anytime during a 24-hour-a-day period. So this is a lot of work. The short version of the problem is you can get this information to vehicles, but it's really, really labor intensive to the point of really being impractical for a lot of organizations. There's just no good way to manage this. So what do? You use what is already there. And this is where the North Dakota DOT, I think, has been particularly innovative in how they approach this and how they get this information out there. For starters, they integrate with an existing software package. In 2023, North Dakota DOT deployed a package called IRIS. IRIS does all the usual advanced transportation management system software stuff. It manages video feeds from CCTV, it controls message signs at the roadway, it gathers weather information from all of the ESS stations around the state. In the future, it may even be doing incident management and managing road closure gates around the state. It's a centralized package that a variety of staff around the state have access to, and eventually is going to be rolled out if and when a TMC, Traffic Management Center facility happens. What enabled a lot of the work that they did with this to, like I said, come up with a really innovative solution is IRIS is open source, which means the code is available and freely modifiable. Integrating with this software, we had to take two distinct inputs. One is the weather alert data from the Federal Emergency Management Agency through something called IPAWS. I'll explain all of this in a little bit. There's a real cool movie coming up that everybody can tune me out for a few minutes and see moving things on the screen. This information has all of the alert stuff. When you see tornado, fire, high wind, even evacuation warnings, that all comes through this feed that is managed by FEMA. The second piece of information was to bring in the environmental sensor stations, the ESS. This is what powers things like road weather information systems. Some states use it as part of their maintenance decision support systems, the thing that kind of guides the application of plow and snow control operations on the roadway. To make this all work, we had to access this data, we had to process it, we had to find ways to generate the messages, and we had to post them on the existing signs. So again, all of these elements already existed out in the world. It was really coming up with a coherent, labor-saving way to bring them all together and make this work. So I mentioned that we've got a little movie for the FEMA IPAWS stuff. How it works is complicated enough that we ended up making a little instructional video for it. And so everybody, this will be great. Just you'll get your popcorn out. I am going to apologize a little bit at the beginning. It is plastered with SRF logos at the beginning and end. It's something we created for NDDOT actually originally, and we had so much trouble explaining to people what it did that we created this. So, without further ado, I'll let you watch this for a few minutes.
Winter storms can make driving hazardous, and managing the roadways is a frenetic buzz of activity for NDDOT operators. Traffic operators monitor weather and operate a vast network of roadside dynamic message signs, or DMS, while facing a constant stream of crashes and changing traffic conditions. Deploying a warning message on a DMS was a labor-intensive process that distracted operators away from other tasks. The solution? NDDOT partnered with SRF to create an automated interface between the national IPAWS system and NDDOT's IRIS software. The purpose of the interface was to improve the quality of travel information and better manage the workload of transportation managers. The result was the Road Weather Message System. Here's how it works. The Integrated Public Alert and Warning System, or IPAWS, is a national database of weather and public safety alerts maintained by the Department of Homeland Security, continually updated by agencies across the country. IPAWS is the definitive source for critical public warning information. IPAWS data is distributed to a wide variety of disseminators, ranging from the emergency alert system to public websites.
Okay, here's the cool part.
The road weather message system integrates data from IPAWS directly into MnDOT's Intelligent Roadway Information System, or IRIS, which controls the message signs on state roadways in Minnesota. The National Weather Service provides its alert information to IPAWS. This information is formatted into a Common Alerting Protocol, or CAP message. CAP messages are published through services called pathways. IRIS connects to a pathway through an IPAWS gateway every 30 seconds and downloads the CAP messages. The warning types in the messages are checked, and the time of the alert is verified. IRIS then calculates what part of the state is covered by the CAP message and identifies all message signs in the alert area. IRIS then determines if a message is needed and composes appropriate text. The system can post messages automatically or prompt an operator to review, modify, and post them as desired. When the alert expires, messages are automatically removed. An operator can modify or remove a message at any time. This automation dramatically reduces an operator's workload so that they can focus on crash response and congestion management. By constantly checking for new, updated, or expired weather alerts, the messages on signs are always accurate and up to date. The road weather message platform is extremely flexible, and the open source nature of the IRIS software means it can be adapted to any information delivered by IPAWS, such as amber alerts, evacuations, fire warnings, or floods. Sophisticated, flexible automation systems like the road weather message system leverage existing data sources and allow staff to focus on the highest value tasks, resulting in safer and less stressful travel for everyone.
So, there we go. Self-congratulatory logo displaying aside, that gives you a real quick overview of the IPAWS system that initially we created for MnDOT and we've adapted now for North Dakota as well. What didn't exist at the time and what is unique to the North Dakota deployment is the automated system that is ingesting weather sensor data. You can see here we've got a sign, and in the background we've got an ESS out there that's got a variety of sensors on it. The idea here is we pull these inputs from 51 sensor stations around the state. And similar to what's going on with the IPAWS system, we're comparing that data to a set of parameters. Things like thresholds for surface temperature, visibility, all that kind of stuff. And then looking at distances to various signs. If one wishes, you can also manually associate these things so that whenever you reach a threshold on a sensor, certain signs will display warnings like low visibility, high winds, etc. The system identifies the signs on its own if you don't create those manual associations, and then it automatically selects and posts the messages. Next, come on. Okay, so where are we now? We've had some experiences with the system. We've also had a few surprises that I want to talk about as we work through things. In terms of what happened with the National Weather Service and the FEMA automation stuff, deployment was actually pretty straightforward on this. We installed the system, spun it up. There's a variety of things that you need to do to be able to access the feeds, although the National Weather Service has made it easier to get access to that information, those CAP messages as they come out. The system processed the alerts, posted messages as expected for a while, then we noticed something seemed off. At first, we saw that some alerts weren't showing up in IRIS, even though clearly we had weather going on out there in the world. First thing you do is check to see, well, is it broken somehow? You know, is the system not doing what it's supposed to do? Turns out it was, but we started pulling raw CAP messages from FEMA, and found out that without really telling anybody, they changed their cap feed to only have emergencies in them. So a lot of the basic weather information, things like, blizzard warnings, stuff like that were non-emergency, suddenly didn't show up. So we needed to make some software modifications. Again, this is part of the power of being able to get the source code and modify things as needed. We found out that the National Weather Service feed, which is distinct from the FEMA feed, still had all of our weather information. So we modified the software to be able to look at both. And if there is some, huge, like an evacuation alert or something like that, that'll show up on the FEMA feed. But we have all of our National Weather Service feed working again. And again, the nice thing about the open source nature is we were able to send this back up to our friends at NDDOT, who are able to integrate into their system, and Nebraska uses this as well. For the environmental sensor integration, that was also pretty straightforward, although development took a little bit longer than we expected. We were still ready on launch day, but it was slightly more challenging than we anticipated to get it up and running and working in a reliable and consistent fashion. System detected things like high winds. We saw it activate and deactivate the signs with appropriate messages. But again, some things were a little off. There's a concept called sensor mappings. It's sort of where in an individual sensor it's telling it what object it is named. That can vary between your host systems like Iris and the implementation that a vendor does on their sensors. Some of that was some trial and error to figure out why we weren't getting the data in the right places we want to be able to make these decisions. Also, kind of the flip side of using open source software is we needed to negotiate a little bit about how we were going to do this. It would have been very easy to just charge straightforward, but we always want this to come back to the community of users of this software. So we developed an initial approach, talked to our friends at NDDOT. They wanted some greater consistency with how things are already done within the system, asked for some changes, we made those, and now it's fully integrated for the base mainline package. So at this point, the underlying code is updated and the signs are active again. We're back in the nice green good area. So what do we take away from all this? Kind of the good stuff from going to these presentations. There are a few lessons, a few other interesting good things. We have established pretty clearly that automated weather messages can really improve the quality of those messages as they stay updated and synchronized with what is current information, and they can really decrease staff workload out there. And again, we've had to make some changes to get the system re-operational, but since August of 2024, you can see how many times we see data that is sufficient to trigger these messages. In total, we've got something like 390 individual message events that would not have been tracked, would not have been displayed, and the traveling public would never have been warned about. And that's the real power of this kind of approach. So the DOT's automation system is maximizing the value of those sign investments. These signs probably would not have shown anything had it not been for these automation parameters. The labor to do this is radically reduced, and that was actually the impetus when we were working with NDDOT. They had people who were staying up all night at home with laptops, watching weather feeds, updating signs during severe weather events in the winter. Now, you can click a button, or I suppose if you're too lazy to click a button, there is a full auto mode in there as well, where the system will simply push the signs out, update them all by themselves. And the real key, as I've said, is the existing resources, the existing federal resources with all of the information coming in from the National Weather Service, the existing roadside resources with the message signs and the sensor stations, and then the existing software is all leveraged for an absolute maximum benefit. And that is the real key to this innovation. So with that, questions? Look at that, 25 minutes. You guys are gonna be out of here early. Yeah. Yeah.
So have you ever run into a situation, or what do you do if, like, say there's something like, I don't know, like a tornado or a hurricane, where you're gonna get the same warning from both? Or does one
Yep.
supersede the other, or how does that work?
The documentation isn't great. Our understanding is that they're not duplicative,
Okay.
so that you won't get the same thing appearing in both. And at this point, we're not using any of the FEMA stuff. We built it for weather, and that's what's configured here. I think there are 43, 44 message types out there, of which we're looking at about a dozen, and they're all weather related. So at this point, it's just not an issue from a technical standpoint. Now, if they implemented it to do something with, say, Amber Alerts or things like that, and we needed to do kind of a priority arbitration on it, I'm actually not sure how that would work. It hasn't come up, so yeah, it's an interesting thought.
And then I have another question too about the sensors.
Yeah.
Have you had any occurrences where, because sensors don't work 100% all the time, so have there been any false messages, and is there a way to check for that, or is that an issue you run into?
Just to make sure everybody's hearing this, the question was, for the sensor systems themselves, the sensors can have faults. They can report erroneous data, or they can not report data at all. So in the not reporting case, then just nothing happens. For the erroneous data, we have, limits on there. 500 mile an hour wind isn't a thing. So there are some limits that way. But if something is simply miscalibrated or is off by a certain percentage, we have no way of knowing that. That's really kind of on the ESS side of things, where you've got to maintain and validate that separately.
Okay, so there is it's up to them to kind of go back and do some quality control, just to make sure everything is
Yeah.
running how it's supposed to.
Yeah, if something is reporting, visibility of 1,000 feet, but it's actually 2,000 feet, we obviously have no way of knowing that on the software end. Cool, great questions. Other folks? Oh, yeah.
Are there any variable speed limits in the local study area or whatever, and does information get transmitted through them? Like, do we actually lower variable speed limit signs with updated speed limits as this kind of occurs, or is that not part of the system?
Well,
Understand the question, like, you've got dynamic message signs that get to display variable information.
mhm.
The variable speed limit sign gets to display variable information. That would coincide with, if you're trying to get traffic to slow down because of whatever event. Is that part of the package, I guess, or just kind of curious? And
Yeah.
we're expecting variable speed limits to react to these types of things.
So the question, if folks couldn't hear, is for variable speed limit signs, because they also display dynamic information. Do those integrate with IRIS, and what does IRIS or the system do with variable speed limits? And the answer a little bit is that it's complicated. IRIS does have a variable speed limit system built into it, and it's algorithmic, but it's meant for traffic and congestion management. So you can do variable speed limits, and if you've got a dense enough roadway sensor network, based on the volume occupancy information, speed information that you get, it can automatically adapt speed limit signs there. There is also a manual, like a VSA or a variable speed advisory system in it that allows you to designate certain signs as these kind of 2-character, I think it's 2-character in all states. I don't think anybody's gone to 100 mile an hour speed limit yet. You can designate those signs, aggregate them out, select them, and then it has a restricted set of messages you can put on it. Generally 45 to 85 miles an hour, depending upon what the max speed is. So you can select it and do it that way. We're actually in the process right now of working with another client to add a speed event into Iris's incident management system, so that rather than crash, road work, whatever, you could have a speed event, put that onto the roadway. It would select a set of signs that you could then add to or remove, set a speed limit for that event. And then as things changed, for example, if it was a crash and you wanted to slow people down coming in, you could revisit that event, change the speed limit. Then when you canceled that event, it'll go back to whatever your standard speed sign is. We've also talked about the notion of automatically adjusting it based on environmental sensors. That gets tricky because we've got sensors scattered all over, we've got variable speed limit signs scattered all over, and without designing those things to be complementary, it's a little hard to know how you'd sync that data up.
I guess related to that, would the agency be obligated to adjust variable speed limits based off these conditions, or can it just be the regulatory speed and that's just the regulatory speed? Just like how, 99% of the signs that are very low.
Yeah. So the question is, if you have variable speed limit signs or variable speed advisory signs, depending upon your regulatory environment, is the agency obligated to adjust these things based on environmental sensor conditions or things like that? Shorter answer is I have no idea. I would say talk to your state AG and see what the legal opinion is there. I won't wade into that. Other questions? Yeah. Oh,
Oh, thanks. I don't know if that's a compliment or not. Alright, so, I completely forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, is there any plans or so once you get all the information into the system, you got it out to the signs, is there also like any plans or any thoughts of integrating it into like your Google Maps or your Waze or whatever? Cause I know some of those navigation programs have, you can have alerts and stuff pop up on there too.
yeah.
Or is that like their deal?
In general, it is their deal. What systems do supply, and I don't know in North Dakota whether or not any of the nav providers are picking this up or not. Iris does provide an output feed that gives the current messages on all signs. And so there's a what's called a config file that's updated every day that gives you sign IDs, lat longs, all that kind of stuff. And it also, every 5 minutes, posts the current status on all of those. So anybody who cares to pick that up and integrate it can. Whether or not anybody is, I don't think so in North Dakota. And on the flip side, getting alerts out of like FEMA IPAWS, stuff like that, they can already do all that stuff. They don't need us in the middle for any of that. Yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing is NWS actually has completely opened. You used to have to apply to get a secure key to get things out of the API. Now it's fully open. Anybody can just point the browser at this thing and get the XML file for their state. Other questions? Man, we are finishing way early. Should have made a longer movie in the middle. All right, well, if not, anybody who's interested, there is my email address. Got old school billboards up here for people who still collect those things. And yeah, I'll give it back to Ryan for the moment.